All right, listeners, buckle up because today we are diving deep into some serious power dynamics with Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
Ooh, exciting.
It is. We're honing in on Law 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once.
I like this one.
Right. It's all about that sweet spot between giving people what they want.
Which is change.
Yeah, but not so much that they freak out and resist.
Makes sense. People crave change, but they're also scared of it.
Totally. It's like wanting to, I don't know, renovate your kitchen, right? You dream of that upgraded space,
Oh, yeah,
but then you think about all the chaos while it's happening, and it's like, ugh.
totally. You want the beautiful result, but not the messy process. And I think that's built into us, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like, we want things to be better,
Of course.
but the unknown makes us cling to what we know, even if it's not perfect.
Absolutely. It's like Green hit the nail on the head when he said that. It's like it's in our wiring or something.
Ah, he did. So how does this craving for change but fear of it play out when we're talking about leadership? Like, how do you lead people towards something new without triggering that resistance?
Well, you have to remember that change disrupts our sense of control.
Hmm.
Like suddenly the routines we have, the predictions we make about how things will go.
Oh, that goes out the window.
Exactly. And that throws us off. Our brains just don't love that uncertainty.
Right. So if you want to influence people effectively,
I can't just bulldoze over their comfort zone.
makes sense. Okay, so no bulldozing allowed. Got it. Speaking of leadership and change, let's bring in a historical heavyweight. Emperor Augustus.
Ooh, yes.
So picture Rome after Julius Caesar. It's a political pressure cooker.
Total chaos.
Totally. Augustus could have easily gone full dictator, just seized power and said, that's it, I'm in charge now, deal with it.
Yeah,
But he didn't. Why not? I mean, if he had all the power, why not just take it?
because he was playing the long game, my friend. Yeah. Augustus was savvy. He understood this Law 45 way before Robert Greene wrote it down.
I see.
Augustus kept up all the appearances of the Roman Republic.
Hmm?
The Senate, the elections, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes,
He was pulling the strings.
yeah, strategically shifting the power towards himself without people realizing what was happening.
So it was like a stealth power grab. Like, oh, hey, everyone, nothing to see here, just your friendly neighborhood emperor subtly reshaping the entire government.
Exactly. Brilliant, right.
It really is. And by the time folks realized how much power he'd actually gathered,
It was too late to do anything about it. It was already baked into the system.
wow, talk about a power move. It makes you wonder, how often does this happen in our own lives without us even realizing?
All the time.
Right, like look at technology. Think about the iPhone.
Good example.
Apple doesn't release some crazy, totally different phone each year, do they?
Nope. They give you a new iPhone, but
It's still clearly an iPhone.
it is. They keep that familiar shape, the way the apps work, the layout. It's like an upgrade, not a whole new system.
And that's why people keep buying them, probably. It's that perfect mix of new and familiar.
You get the excitement of something new, but without that fear of, like, oh my gosh, how do I even use this thing?
Exactly. You're not starting from scratch every year.
Right. And that's the sweet spot that Greene's talking about with Law 45. It's about making change feel like an improvement.
Not a rejection.
Exactly. You're building on what's already there, not tearing it all down.
This principle, though, it's bigger than just emperors and smartphones, isn't it?
Way bigger. It's about this dance between progress and tradition, which happens everywhere.
Right. Because too much change alienates people.
Oh, yeah.
But too little can lead to stagnation. It's like you get stuck.
Absolutely. And, I think we've all seen this happen, right? Think about like a company that suddenly changes its logo and branding to something totally different.
Or like someone trying to change their personality overnight. It just feels inauthentic.
Totally. Like, who are you? You're trying too hard. It backfires.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so we're seeing this pattern. Introduce change gradually, make it feel like an evolution. But what about times when huge EE change is unavoidable?
Good point.
Like the Great Depression.
Yeah.
How did FDR push through the New Deal, all those massive reforms, without everyone freaking out?
Because whether he knew it or not, FDR understood Law 45. He was a master of it.
Really?
Imagine if he just dropped the entire New Deal on people all at once.
Oh, it would have been chaos.
Total chaos. People were already dealing with enough.
Like enough upheaval already.
Exactly. So he was strategic. Rolled out the New Deal policies in phases. It allowed people to see the benefits, to adjust to each change before the next one came along.
So smart. It's like he was saying, hey, let's try this. And look, it's actually helping. Okay, now let's try this next thing.
You got it. It created a feeling of momentum, but without being overwhelming.
Okay, that's crucial, that pacing. Because Law 45 isn't about being scared of change or resisting it, is it? It's about understanding the speed of change and how people react.
Absolutely. It's about managing expectations and working with human nature. It's not. And to be honest, there are times when ignoring this whole idea of gradual change can backfire, big
Well,
time.
give me an example. Like, when has this not worked?
Well, you can look at the collapse of the Soviet Union. Gorbachev, with his perestroika and glasnost reforms,
Yeah.
he was actually trying to save the Soviet system.
Wait, really? I thought those reforms were meant to, bring it down.
Nope. He was trying to reform it, make it more
Hmm.
functional. But it backfired, and a lot of historians argue it's because the pace of change was just too much too fast. People couldn't keep up. Things started to unravel. And, well, we know the end of that story.
Wow. So even with good intentions, going too fast can be just as bad as doing nothing at all. It's almost like that saying, too much of a good thing.
Exactly. Knowing when to hit the gas and when to ease up is crucial. You need that balance.
Okay, so we've got Roman emperors, the New Deal, the fall of the Soviet Union. This is getting pretty heavy.
Yeah, a bit.
Let's bring it down to earth for a minute. How about a more everyday example of this Law 45 in action? Something we can all relate to.
All right, how about this? Think about Netflix.
Okay?
Back when it was all about mailing DVDs. Remember those little red
Oh,
envelopes?
yeah. They were everywhere.
Right. They could have just shut down that whole DVD business the second streaming became a thing, just said, nope, DVDs are done, everyone switched to streaming.
Yeah. But they didn't.
They didn't. Why do you think that is?
I mean, they knew their audience, right? People were used to those red envelopes. Maybe they even liked that ritual of picking a movie, getting the mail.
Yeah.
It would have been a huge shock to just shut it down overnight.
Exactly. They kept those DVDs going while slowly, strategically making streaming more and more appealing. They gave people time to adjust, to get used to the idea of streaming.
So the transition felt smooth, natural, like it was meant to be.
You got it. That's Law 45 in action.
Okay, so we've got Netflix, Ancient Rome, FDR. I'm starting to see how this Law 45 is less about resisting change and more about, like, choreographing it.
Ooh, I like that.
Ah.
Choreographing change, that's a great way to put it. It's about making it feel like a natural evolution, not a jarring, sudden shift.
It makes sense. People are more likely to get on board if they feel like they're part of a journey, not like they're being dragged along, kicking and screaming.
100%. And speaking of bringing people along, that's a crucial point. If you want to make change happen, you got to make people feel involved in the process. Don't just dictate from on high.
Yeah, no one likes to feel like they have no say in what's happening, especially if it affects them directly.
Right. Make them feel like they're part of the solution, that their voices matter. That makes a huge difference.
Okay, involve people. Got it. What else? What other practical tips can we take away from this?
This one might seem obvious, but it's easy to forget. Pay attention to resistance. If people are pushing back, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not.
Not always. It's a sign that you might be moving too fast, or maybe you haven't explained things clearly enough, or maybe you need to tweak your approach.
So it's not about just ignoring the pushback or powering through.
Nope. See resistance as information. It tells you what you need to adjust, what needs more explanation, or where you might need to rethink things entirely. Listen to it.
That's a really good point. It's like feedback, right? Even if it's uncomfortable, it helps you improve.
Exactly. Okay, so to sum up, Law 45 is about finding that sweet spot between patience and momentum, knowing that change is a process, not an event.
I like that. But it's tricky, right? Because too fast and you alienate people, but too slow and you risk getting stuck. How do you find that balance?
That's the million-dollar question. It's a constant dance, and honestly, there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
I figured as much.
But I think a big part of it is observation and feedback, like we just talked about. You have to constantly be paying attention to how people are responding to the changes you're making.
It's about reading the room, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Are people enthusiastic? Are they engaged? That's a good sign. But if you're getting resistance or just apathy, that's a sign to adjust. Maybe you're going too fast, or maybe the change itself needs a second look.
This is making me think about all those times I've tried to make changes in my own life and just hit a wall. Maybe I was trying to do too much at once, or I wasn't bringing people along with me.
It happens to all of us. It's so easy to get caught up in our own vision that we forget other people might not be on the same page.
Right. But even when you're the one driving the change, Law 45 still applies. It's about understanding human nature, whether you're leading a country or just trying to convince your family to try a new restaurant.
Absolutely. It all comes back to that. We all have our comfort zones, our fears, our habits.
Yeah.
And change, even when it's good, can disrupt those things.
Yeah, it's unsettling. So, how do you make people feel less disrupted? How do you make them more comfortable with stepping outside those comfort zones?
Well, communication is key. You have to clearly explain the need for change, what the benefits will be, and, most importantly, address people's concerns.
So, it's not just telling them what's going to change, it's explaining why it's necessary and how it will ultimately make things better.
You got it. Paint that picture of the future. Show them how they fit into it. But it's not just about talking at people.
You have to actually listen to them too.
Absolutely. Active listening is crucial. Take those concerns seriously. Be willing to adjust based on what you hear. It's about collaboration, making sure everyone feels heard.
That makes sense. No one wants to feel like their opinion doesn't matter, especially when it's about something that will affect them.
Exactly. And this all goes back to what we were saying earlier about respecting tradition while you're innovating. Change doesn't have to mean throwing out everything old. Actually, the best changes often build upon existing traditions.
Right. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Keep what's valuable, but don't be afraid to try new things.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot between the old and the new, honoring the past while still moving forward.
Easier said than done, though, right? Finding that sweet spot, it's not always clear when to push and when to hold back.
You're right. There's no magic formula.
Yeah.
That's where observation and feedback come in again. You have to constantly be paying attention to how people are reacting, adjusting your approach as needed.
Like a constant feedback loop.
Exactly. And that's a big part of what makes leadership in times of change so challenging.
And so important. This whole Law 45, it's not just about like manipulating people to get what you want. It's a whole philosophy of change management.
That's a great way to put it. And at the core of it all, it's about understanding human nature, recognizing that change can be scary, even when it's for the best.
And if you want that change to last, you need to bring people along with you, not just force it on them.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You need to meet people where they are, address their concerns, show them how they can be part of the solution. And sometimes that takes time.
It does. We've talked about pacing, communication, respecting tradition, listening to resistance. But there's one more piece I want to touch on. Leadership. What role does that play in all of this?
Ah, yes, leadership. That's the glue that holds it all together. Because ultimately, it's the leader who sets the tone, who creates the vision, who guides everyone through the change process.
So what does a Law 45 leader look like? What qualities do they need?
Well, first and foremost, they need to be visionary. They have to be able to see beyond the status quo, beyond how things are right now.
So more than just wanting to change things, you need to be able to picture what that change actually looks like.
Yes. And it has to be a compelling vision, something that inspires people to follow.
Makes sense. But vision alone isn't enough, is it? You need more than just a good imagination.
You're right. You also need strategy. A Law 45 leader can break down that big vision into smaller, achievable steps. It's like creating a roadmap, anticipating obstacles, coming up with ways to get around them.
So part visionary, part strategist.
Yeah.
What else?
Part master communicator. You have to be able to articulate that vision clearly and persuasively, both to your team and to the wider world. You need to inspire people, motivate them, reassure them.
Especially when things get tough. Change can be scary, and people need reassurance that they're headed in the right direction.
Absolutely. And I'd add one more quality to the list, empathy. A true Law 45 leader can understand and connect with people's concerns, their fears, their anxieties.
Yeah. So it's not about just giving orders and expecting people to blindly obey.
Definitely not. It's about putting yourself in their shoes, seeing things from their perspective, addressing those concerns with compassion.
That's huge. So we're talking about a leader who is visionary, strategic, communicative, empathetic, and something else you mentioned earlier, resilient.
Oh, yeah. Can't forget that one. Because change is rarely a smooth process. There will be bumps in the road, setbacks, challenges, unexpected obstacles.
So a Law 45 leader needs to be able to bounce back from those setbacks, not give up at the first sign of trouble.
Exactly. You have to maintain your composure, your optimism, your determination, because that's what inspires others to keep going too.
This is all so inspiring. It's like a blueprint for effective leadership in times of change.
And it all goes back to understanding Law 45. That change needs to be introduced strategically, thoughtfully. It's about respecting human nature, addressing people's concerns, creating a sense of shared purpose.
It's like you said, working with human nature, not against it.
That's it. And when you do that, you can unlock So much potential for positive change.
Welcome back, everyone. We've been unpacking a lot, too, when it comes to Law 45.
You have.
It's one of those things that once you start seeing it, you realize how much it's at play everywhere.
Absolutely. And it really makes you think differently about how change happens.
Yeah. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I do want to make one thing really clear. Law 45, it's not about manipulation.
Right. That's so important. It's not about tricking people into doing what you want.
Yeah, it's not about being sneaky or underhanded or any of that. It's about something much, much bigger.
It's about understanding how people work, their psychology, and working with that, not against it.
Exactly. It's like guiding people through change in a way that feels natural, that actually benefits them.
And ultimately gives them more agency.
Yes. That reminds me of something Green talked about, respecting people's intelligence.
Oh, he's so right about that.
Like, you can't treat people like sheep who will just blindly follow.
Exactly. People are smart. They can understand complex issues. They can make their own decisions.
So Law 45, it's not about pulling the wool over anyone's eyes. It's about empowering them to embrace change.
By being transparent,
Yeah.
by giving them the right information, by making them feel like they're part of the process.
Exactly. It's all about creating that shared ownership. So everyone feels like they're part of the solution, not just, being told what to do.
100%. Which brings us back to everything we talked about with communication and collaboration.
Oh, yeah. And listening to people's concerns. It all comes back to building trust. Because when people feel like their opinions matter, when they don't feel manipulated, change isn't so scary.
Right. It's like the difference between being invited on an adventure and being, dragged along against your will.
Perfect analogy. And honestly, I think that's the heart of Law 45. Leading with empathy, respecting people, genuinely wanting to make things better for everyone.
It's not power over people. It's power with people.
That's it. Change is a journey, not a destination. And Law 45 gives you the tools to bring people along on that journey.
In a way that feels good. In a way that empowers them.
Okay, we've covered so much ground today. Augustus, FDR, Apple, Netflix. We've seen Law 45 play out in history, in business, in our personal lives.
We've talked about psychology, communication, leadership. It's a lot.
It is. And honestly, I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. But we do need to wrap up for today. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about the big changes you'd like to see in the world, like the really big ones, the ones that seem almost impossible.
The systemic stuff, the big societal shifts.
Yeah. Now ask yourself, how could you use these principles of Law 45 to make even a tiny dent in those problems? How can you work with human nature, not against it, to help create a better future?
That's a great question to leave people with. Because it's easy to get overwhelmed by the scale of those problems.
It is. But Law 45 reminds us that change is possible. But it takes understanding, it takes strategy, it takes respect for how people work.
And sometimes it takes time. But it's possible.
This has been such a great conversation. Thanks for joining me today.
The pleasure was all mine. This Law 45 is fascinating.
And for all of you listening out there, remember, the power to make a difference is in your hands. So go out there, use those Law 45 skills, and make it happen.